Hello and welcome to Love is a Battlefield, the podcast. My name is Tilly Moore and this is episode 20, where I read out all the charges and convictions that a perpetrator of violent domestic violence crimes did against me. And in doing so, I also go into quite a lot of detail about each one and what that meant in real life, like what they did to get that actual wording of that charge, and then how that charge either did or didn't become a conviction. So it gives an insight into the justice system, in my experience of it, and how it worked for that situation. So before we get into that, how are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're safe. And I hope that someone out there takes something from this. Honestly, if I had heard that an episode like this in a podcast land had existed when I came out of my personal domestic violence experience, I would have clung to that. I would have been like, tell me more. I need to know more. Actually, I did record this and it went for 2 hours. I was going to split it, but the thing that I record on, it would have taken many hours to cut and paste every little bit into a whole new file, close that file, go back to the other file, cut and paste those few seconds, and you had to do it like few seconds by few seconds because I had all these like little choppy bits and it was just too much. It was too much. And I thought, I'm just going to sit down again and just be more succinct to get to the point. It is a bit tricky when you're explaining the justice system to get to the point because it's very convoluted and it can be confusing at times, and it is for everyone. So in saying that, this is not legal advice. This is all based on my personal experience and what happened with me, but it can give a general kind of idea of how it's going to work for you. I may bounce around the place because as I'm talking, I'll likely want to tell you other things because there's so many important little bits and pieces that happen when you're dealing with the justice system that are important to note. So apologies for that. I will try to keep it succinct, try to get into it. There's a lot to discuss. Let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to read to you, so I have documents. They don't use postal mail now. They use email to send you official documents to tell you the indictment charges and tell you the sentencing outcome, convicted charges. So how do we get there? That's the first thing we have to know, is how do you get to all these indictment things and charges and convictions? Like, let's just give a brief rundown. So, police. There's an incident, the police attend. Then the police want a statement from you. They take a statement at the time, and depending on other things, like if you're in emergency and everything, they do come into emergency and get a statement from you with when you are having like multiple head injuries, major body injuries, having scans of your entire body, and you're on very strong painkillers, they still get a statement off you instantly. And then that statement is locked in, set in stone to use in the trial in court, word for word. Why did you say this? Why did you say that? When you are high and you have like a double concussion. Like I had many head knocks, huge like head knocks, like head concussion, bleeding head injuries. That evening I was held hostage and my whole body was like very much damaged. I had to have like imaging everywhere, head to toe. I was like he was trying to tenderize a roast or something. Like my whole body was injured and I was on really strong painkillers. And so I was a bit high and I also had a concussion. I was very confused, also in shock. I'd been held hostage and escaped. I'd survived almost being murdered. So I was not in a good place, but that's it. Victims only get that, you get that opportunity and then they can do an audit. So I think it was the next day or something I got to do an audit. But again, I'm still I have a concussion. I'm still on very strong painkillers and that's it. That's it. That's my opportunity. That was my opportunity to speak. And so that's a bit frustrating. So that's what happens. You've got the police, the incident, you give your statement, and then the police gather evidence and decide what charges they're going to give to the perpetrator. Now, they do need a statement initially quickly so that they can have evidence in your statement to press certain charges. They have to pick what charges, like what have they done wrong? You can't arrest someone because they've done something bad. You have to give it a label, like what official charge under the law that they have broken. So that's what they do. And then they build a case from there. And what happens after that is, okay, this is in Australia and this crime happened in the state of Queensland. So the magistrate then it goes to a magistrate to decide if they're a risk to the community, if they're going to get bail or not. So they can be held in the police station lockup, and then a magistrate will see them within about 24, 48 hours or something and decide if they're going to get bail and be free or have an ankle brace or some kind of conditions, or if they're going to be held and sent to the remand prison. So in this case, my perpetrator, I don't like saying my, but I kind of have to in this situation, was held and sent to a remand prison. However, the first time they were arrested, there's lots of incidents. Basically, you've got to keep reporting, and the police see an escalation, and eventually they do attempt, or succeedingly, is that a word? Take your life. So when it gets to that point, that's when they go to prison. However, there had been arrests in the past for very violent crimes, including children and myself, and they were let out on bail. They were let to go free. And this time, however, when I was held hostage, nearly lost my life and all the things that went along with that, which I did touch on in episode 1, this time they were held in a remand. So a magistrate then sees them. And then from that point on, basically the justice part, it takes a year it's 1 to 2 years before the trial. Did you know that? Did you know that if someone gets arrested for a crime that's big and they're in prison or something, it's usually 1 to 2 or more years before it actually goes to trial. It's a very lengthy process. So they have lots of in that time, there are lots of court dates. And in that time, they check in on them basically to make sure it's not like there's some countries, like I saw a documentary about somewhere in South America, I think it was Haiti, oh, your heart breaks, where people are put into prison and they just don't get a court date and they're there for years and they haven't actually been convicted of any crime. And so what we have here is they touch base. They have, every time there's a court date, they'll set the next court date, either a month or 2 or something down the track, to touch base, see how everything's proceeding, make sure everything's going okay. Also, they can appeal their bail. They can go to the highest Supreme Court to appeal their bail if they think they have a shot of convincing a judge to let them out. But a judge going against the judge previous to them takes kind of a lot of convincing. So that is a tricky one for them. So where are we? We've had the police. You've given a statement. They've had that initial hearing within 24 to 48 hours to decide if they're going to stay in prison or not. And if they do stay in prison, they go to remand prison. It's basically a prison where people sort of sit for however long until they have their trial. And then once they're convicted of a prison sentence, they go to a prison. That is a technical term, a prison. Basically, they're prisons. They're all the same. And also, where's there a bed? Where is their availability? They have to find somewhere for a person. So that's where they go. They're held in custody in a prison for that duration. So early on in the piece, I'm pretty sure it was like 2 weeks, maybe up to 4 weeks after the crime, there was a hearing that I was told a date of, and I was very nervous about it because this was when they were appealing. So what you get one appeal on your bail. So within 24 to 48 hours, a magistrate goes, nope, you're not going back to the community, you're staying. And then I think it's either 2 weeks or 4 weeks after that, there's a court date where you can appeal that and say, get a lawyer and say, hey, please let me out. And that's not the Supreme one. If that's denied, then you can pay very expensive people and go to the Supreme Court and really sort of push. I think you might be able to get it on legal aid, I don't know. But you can push for like further. But however, the one that can be done at this stage, 2 to 4 weeks. Sorry, this is so confusing. But it is. It's meant to be. It's not meant to be fun. So anyway, I had a date set for that and I was very prepared that, they will likely get out of jail this day. They might. I'm very nervous. So I rang the court to ask a question and they said, oh yeah, that happened today. And I was like, wait, what? But that's meant to be like Friday or the following week. And they said, oh no, it happened today. And it's like, thanks. So when you are the victim, there's a common expression called a mushroom. You are a mushroom, kept in the dark and fed shit. They say that it's because you're an official witness and they don't want you to know anything that might taint your view on everything that happened, so that when you take the stand, you're just giving proper 100% true evidence. However, they don't tell you things that they really could help you. Like that really was scary because He could have been free that day and I would not have been told, because you can't join the victims register until they're officially convicted of their crimes, which is like a year or two later, once their trial is done. So up until that point, there's no one that is telling you if they're free or not. And the onus is on you to call the actual courthouse and figure out which courthouse they're at, and to chase things up and quickly learn about how the justice system works for your own safety, to know, okay, are they free? Can I go out of the building, or should I quickly move or stay at someone's house? Like, I had this safety plan in place. So they said that hearing happened today, but luckily their appeal and request for bail was denied and I was safe. So they remained at that prison and were to remain at that prison until after trial. So the next part is indictment. Indictment basically means the official list of charges. So the police attend the crime and they get your statement, and then a detective puts together all the evidence to put forward for the courts and for the prosecution, because the prosecution, is this confusing, is like the lawyers, the barristers who will be doing the case in the courts, as the lawyer people. And so it's so convoluted. And so where are we up to? So you got the police, then it goes to the detective, and the detective puts it all together. And so the indictment is the official charges. So the police, detective, and they come up with the list of charges that they initially get charged with when they're arrested and held, and that are shown to that magistrate who decides, no, we're keeping them in prison. And then the indictment is where all the evidence is reviewed. So there's a lot of work. The detective has to get this whole case and all this evidence together and put it forward to a judge to decide, yes, I approve that these are the list of charges that reflect these crimes, or sometimes they add or delete or change, something like that. So at the indictment, you then get sent as a victim. You get sent an email saying, hey, here's the indictment list. So at this stage, right, if you're a victim, at this stage, you are connected in with a victim liaison officer from the DPP. Is this like the most boring podcast you've ever listened to? And you're like, wait a minute, who, what? I just know that when my perpetrator got arrested, I wanted to know all this, and no one would tell me I was a mushroom. So even though it's annoying, it's clunky and convoluted, we have to keep going, because I really know that there will one day be someone out there who's like, yes, tell me what happens next. I'm at this stage of it. What am I going to expect? So, arrested, given statement, held or not held. Some are set free. Some are set free with an ankle monitor, and then a court dates are set. Whether they're inside or outside, court dates are still set. So the next big court date is an indictment, and that is where you first get contact from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. There is an office in cities, and there are prosecuting barristers in there and lawyers and their assistant, what do they call it? And then there's victim liaison officers who liaise with victims about what's happening. But don't think it's all like trauma informed and they're there to like support you any means. It is just the facts to tell you, yes, this court date, no, you're not required, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. It's still very legal. So after the indictment, so you don't have to go to any of these court things. The only court date you would have to attend will be if you are subpoenaed. Subpoenad's a legal order to go to trial. So you don't have to be involved in any of these. It's all naturally flowing because it's not you versus your perpetrator. It's the government versus your perpetrator. Your perpetrator has broken the law of the land. They've broken the law. And the government is saying, hey, you broke our laws. You're in trouble. So you're just a witness. It's out of your hands now. This isn't you versus them. You're not doing this to them. The police and the detectives and now the Department of Prosecutions have all agreed that there is enough evidence to support this person has broken the laws and we are going to do something about it. So it's nothing to do with you at this point. You're just You're nothing. No, you've probably been told that by your abuser, so do not listen to that. No, you are a victim. And a witness, and you're very important, but it's so good that it flows without you. Because as we know, a lot of perpetrators like to blame their victim for consequences of their actions, and they want to see that it's you doing this to them and how dare you. It's not. They've broken the law. The law is intervening and the government is saying, hey, no. So you've got the police who say, oh, yes, this person's done something. The detective agrees they've done something. The magistrate agrees they've done something. And then the prosecution, barristers, lawyers, they all say, oh, yes, we're taking this on. So they take it on. And the indictment is when the official charges list comes out, and you will have an official email sent to you. And that's what I'm about to read. So what I'm about to share with you is a list of charges just from one event, from being held hostage. Now, there are 13. Counts 1 and 4, contravention of domestic violence order with the circumstance of aggravation. So that means there was a domestic violence order in place and it was breached. And it wasn't just breached like a text message was sent or a love letter or something. It was actually an aggravated, violent breach. Now, the rest of these all have in brackets after them domestic violence offence. Now, why is that? Because if you assault someone randomly on the street, you're going to get in more trouble than if you assault a woman you're in a relationship with. Every charge and crime is weighed differently, and domestic violence offence has their own sentencing framework for those things. So while they have increased, they've very much increased strangulation/choking, which means strangulation, because there is evidence, so much research and evidence and statistics to show that if someone is to be strangled by an intimate partner, that is always a precursor to them being murdered, that they always go on to murder them. So that's where they get serious, and that's like 3 years in prison. That's very serious. However, they are all listed under domestic violence offences because it's different to, assaulting a white man in a suit. Did I say that out loud? Sorry, Freudian slip there. Hashtag bitter, hashtag projection. Let's move along. So we have count 2, willful damage. There was a lot of, so this is where I go into detail about what each of these means, and I share more insight into what happened to me when I was held hostage. So he broke into my house, held me hostage, and I nearly died and stuff. There was a whole lot that happened. But so willful damage is, there is a video of him actually doing it, tearing the internet out of the wall, not just pulling the plug out of the hole, but like tearing the whole thing out of the wall. That was caught on CCTV. So evidence there. Holes in the wall. While I was being assaulted, I was thrown into the wall. I was beaten every which way in every room, but there were big holes in walls. Other damage, he microwaved my work ID so I couldn't go back to work. Melted it. He did a lot of damage around the place. He did, after I escaped, he did 50% damage, 50% manipulation. What do I mean by that? Listen to this. This is like, whew. So, yeah, he melted my work ID, filled my pool skimmer box, packed it with leaves, twigs and bark, packed it. The police were like, oh, yeah. Because he'd done so much, and he had unplugged the CCTV not long after breaking into my house. So the breaking in was caught on CCTV, and then other cameras caught some of the stuff inside. But the external CCTV had been switched off by the perpetrator while I was held hostage. Otherwise, there would be footage of all the things that were done outside. So because there was no footage, he's done so much, why are we going to, play into that? So we didn't document that. But, I didn't even want to tell you today, because if he heard it, he'd be like, oh, yeah, look at me having an impact in her life. I'm getting off on this. It really wasn't it's so weird. It's disturbing. It says more about his mental state than has any impact on me at all. Another thing was scratching into the floor of my shed, I heart you. Another thing was getting the label maker and printing out I love you and stickers and putting them everywhere, writing I love you notes and hiding them in places, hoping that I would find them like months or years on. You know, they want that impact. They want to know that they're like in your life and like you'll be reminded of them. And it's very unwell. Shows more about their mental state than has any impact on you. And, you know, microwaving the work ID. Other things was the clothes I had been wearing that I had torn off me. So I had dog water poured on me, alcohol poured on me, spit on me. I was soaked. Every time I tried to escape, I never stopped trying to escape. I'm telling you this for nothing. I'm telling you for nothing. It's free. It is free. I'm not getting paid. I kept trying to get to every door, constantly trying to get away. And as you know, when someone is grabbed, like I would get grabbed and punished for trying to get to the door, thrown on the ground, beaten, kicked, punched, all the things. And when I was trying to get to the doors, you know, when someone grabs you and then or you quick, like I would kind of like try and just suddenly go really quickly. He'd grab my clothing and pull it. And so I was in torn clothing. I had my breasts poking out. I was in torn, soaked, dripping clothing with dog water, alcohol, spit all over me. And lots of, like, he'd just be on top of me, pinning me down, just spitting on me. And torn clothing, saturated clothing. And he had this idea in his head that he wanted to sell the story that I was mentally ill, that I was suicidal, that he needed to assist me, and I was, you know, an unhinged woman having a mental health episode. So that was his defense that he had planned. So when I looked like this with torn, wet clothing, with my breasts out, absolutely ripped like to shreds, hanging off me like you would imagine, like Tom Cruise in Castaway. Did he ever have clothes? He would have had his top off. He's a dude. He's allowed to. I mean, you're a castaway on an island. Are women allowed to take their tops off yet? Am I right? But yeah, just torn, dripping clothing, ripped to pieces, hanging off me. And he forced, like physically, very strong, forced that clothing off me and other clothing on me. My hair was still soaked with all that stuff, but, you know, that could have been my fault. You know, I could have been this person he was trying to sell a picture of. So he ripped those clothes off me, and after I'd escaped, he stayed in the house and he did all these things. He did the pool thing, he did the shed I heart you, or they got out the label. But like, seriously, you've just held someone hostage and they've escaped. What do? Pull out the label maker and melt their work ID in the mic? Like, you're not well. So it was bin day, and you can hear when the truck's coming to get the bin, and that's our weekly thing. And so the police realised he got those clothes and any other evidence. There was lots of evidence. He cleaned up as much evidence as he could. All the evidence of the crimes he put in the bin just before the truck came and took it. So they never found that. However, I had described the clothes I was wearing, and I wasn't wearing them when I escaped. And they were trying to figure out what happened. And there was CCTV then, this little clip where you can see me in the background and I'm wearing that yellow top all torn, and you can see it. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that camera was actually working. And that's really one of the reasons we were so successful in getting convictions, because of the evidence, like literal, there it is. So he tried to hide that as well, and he smashed my TV, very expensive TV. He just punched it. And that was, because I had asked him to please leave. It didn't work. So he had to punch the TV to teach me, because he knew I liked that TV and they no longer made that specific TV. So a little bit of a power play for him there. So that's under willful damage. And there's a lot to tell you, because a lot happened in the time I was held hostage. I was held hostage from approximately midnight to 8 something in the morning. I fought nonstop to escape. Nonstop in that time. It was action, like nonstop. Like, it's so hard to describe. And when the police took my statement, I said, I'll tell you a handful of incidents, but I cannot sit here and describe each and everything, because it was non-stop, like non-stop getting beaten, non-stop trying to get to each and every door, non-stop trying to scream for help, non-stop getting hit this way, hit that way, thrown here, thrown there, this thrown on you, this poured on you. It was nonstop. And it's very hard for you to understand that not just a few things happen, because I think in movies too, we kind of see just a handful of things happen, and you can't even imagine that over that period of time, if it's non-stop, like no break. I was not allowed to go to the toilet. He had to escort me and restrain me, and just so I could wee, and I had to beg to wee, and he had to watch me and everything. So it was non-stop. So that's why there's so much to explain behind each charge. Count 3. I had a big issue with the wording of this, and I actually talked to prosecutions about it, but it was too late at that point. I think it was at the detective point where they choose the wording. Now, they titled it choking in a domestic violence setting. However, that means strangulation. I talked to them about it. And according to the justice system, choking and strangulation are the exact same thing. Now, according to the medical system and English dictionary, they are not the same thing. And it was something I did bring up and say, I really want the word strangulation, because I now know the difference between being choked and strangled. So the difference between being choked, I had been choked by this person aggressively, violently, not sexual or anything like that, aggressively and violently in an act of violence, years prior. But I had been strangled and then got death gurgles, like nearly died. And the difference isn't the fact that you're nearly dead. The difference is that I was floppy. I was paralyzed. Everything was restricted. There was no wheezing. You couldn't wheeze. It was a brick wall. There was no air entry or exit. And then when I was accepted, this is it, I'm going now, and heard death gurgles, I don't know how the body made those noises, because there was definitely no air entry or exit into the body. I believe, I've been trying to think, was he doing it to teach me a lesson about how he has all the power and control? Did he just want me to lose consciousness? I wasn't going for losing consciousness. I was going straight to sayonara. I am exiting stage left. Like, I was dying. Because it wasn't like just choking where you lose a little bit of oxygen to your brain, go a little bit dizzy and a bit unconscious. This was death. Like, this was attempted murder. This was, and I believe that when the death gurgles came, he knew that that was it. I was going. And maybe he actually thought, I don't want to go to jail for that long, so I will, and what am I going to do with the body? And maybe he's like, oh, she actually is really dying, like it's actually happening in front, she's dying. Yeah, it was for so long. I minimized when I gave my statement because of the fear. This person had me under so much fear that if I didn't minimize the things he did, I could get in trouble from him because he would accuse me of lying. Isn't that ridiculous? But the death go, like, it was full on. So, you always imagine if you're being strangled, you're going to use your arms and fight back. But I did not know, genuinely being strangled, squeezed, your spinal cord, like there are no signals going anywhere below your neck. No blood, no oxygen, no signals, nothing. And I was floppy. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I was just a head, and I couldn't do anything. So I was waiting for death. Like, it was so serious. And so when they use the word choking, it really feels like it's been minimized. And they say, no, according to the justice system, choking and strangulation is the exact same thing. It's the exact same sentence. It's still very serious. It's a 3-year sentence. But for me, the wording is like, I wasn't choked. I was strangled. And if it went to trial, I would have been very persistent about not using the word choking. But that's what they did. And they say, legally, it's the same thing. It's just not very good for the person who went through it to use such minimized language. And I believe the justice system should understand the difference between the word choking and the word strangulation. I believe that they think choking is a precursor to being murdered as well. But because what I went through was attempted murder. Like, that was not some power play thing. That was, this woman is going to die, and the death gurgles maybe got him to finally, like, let go. And it was just, yeah. Ugh. Anyway, that's that one, and that carries, like, the heaviest sentence of everything, because, yeah, there are statistics and evidence now that the justice system does acknowledge that if a man strangles a woman, he is so many times, I don't know the exact stats, but he's so many times likely to then murder her in his next event or very soon after. Like, the next step after that is murder, because if they do that, it's something in the brain or something where if they can do that, they're likely to murder. Like, I don't know. They said they had evidence, research and stats around it. So they now take that very, very seriously, which is good. But I had that done a couple of times, but he only got one charge, because let's minimise everything and look after him. Because I had it done, like the full-on strangle. And then I also was choked with a shirt when he was pulling me, and then pulled the shirt. I had like red band around my neck from being like choked or strangled. That wasn't the same as what the attempted murdery kind of thing was, but tried to hold my airway off like with that too. So it's like, to me it looks like they've only charged on the shirt one and not the actual trying to kill me one, which I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, for most violent DV things, they bunch it all together and give them 1 year in prison, basically. Basically, if you're in this situation, that's what you're looking at. That's generally the theory behind it, is like they get 1 year. So obviously different things weigh out differently. What they say, they can put themselves into crap, but generally it's that. Count 5, unlawful stalking, domestic violence offence. Lots and lots of stalking happened. Lots and lots. Calling repetitively, hundreds and hundreds of times at workplace, calling repetitively on the phone, texting non-stop, turning up places. I believe, my phone was being tracked. I had evidence of that in general, that I would be going somewhere and his car would always appear. And I thought, oh, what a coincidence. How naive and gullible am I? Very. I just kept thinking, well, it's just a coincidence. It's a small place that we live. Yeah. He'll happen to be somewhere on the road when I happen to go out, or I'll happen to go to a certain place and then he'll happen to show up 5 minutes later. That's just coincidence. He even tried to sell it to me at one point, like, oh, we're meant to be. My soul told me you were going to be there. He was tracking me through, I think, Google. He had my logins stuff. He had access to lots of things. I'd leave my phone in the room when I went in the shower or whatever, and he had access to stuff. So he logged in and found out where I'd been and everything and where I was going, and he could just, and there's one time I'm like, I need help to get away because you're being very violent. I'm going to go talk to a police officer because you just won't let me go, and I'm really scared because of your behaviour. Like, I'm very open and honest. I probably shouldn't be. I should be more of a game player, but that's the thing. These people don't choose game players because they're the game player. They try and choose people with a heart who are very honest, open, empathetic. Anyway, I was going to the police and he's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And then after my car turned in that direction, suddenly the messages and calls, like attempted calls and everything, changed, begging me not to. And it's like, yeah, he's tracking me. And then he said, I turned up there and I was there. And I don't think he did. I think he was lying that he came and followed me there. Like, what were you going to do? Anyway, lots of stalking. He would drive behind me and hit my car. I have a video of him hitting my car. I never actually dobbed that in because that was that period of time where I couldn't dob in the little things at that period of time because of all the threats against me. I couldn't dob anything in. And once I was held hostage and nearly died, it's like I had no choice. My whole house was smashed up. I was all smashed up. I looked shocking. And my TV was smashed up. Like, everything was smashed up. I looked shocking. And it was just like, I'd just come out of being held hostage and he wanted me to keep that a secret and protect him. And the threats to kill me and my kids and everything, it was just like, it hit the point where I have to. But before that, the threats outweighed the little things. Like if I had gone, oh, look, he hit my car, I have dash cam footage, he would have got like a slap on the wrist and he would have escalated his violent behaviour toward me and possibly carried through with the threats. He had a lot of threats. He was trying to make up false accusation. Oh, he was just very dangerous. Count 6, burglary at night with violence. This one I found funny. I giggled when I first heard it because I'm like, burglary, but at night, but with violence. Because each thing is weighed differently in the justice system. If you're burgled during the day, it's less than at night. If it's no violence, they just come in and steal something and leave, they get less sentence, a lower sentence than if they're violent during the burglary. So if you're going to be a burglar, do it during the day and be nice. Don't be violent. And you won't serve as long in prison as you would if it was at nighttime with violence. Fun fact. And again, in brackets, domestic violence. So really, doesn't matter. It's just a woman. Bit of projection, hashtag. The next one reflects me being held hostage. It's called deprivation of liberty. You might have heard of it in movies and stuff. That's where I'd heard about it. Deplib is the slang the detectives use. Deplib. Deprivation of liberty. It's when someone holds you hostage. Holds you against your will. And that one was very important for me because I was like, yes, try explaining your way out of that. I had to restrain her. She was so out of it. She was just saying she's going to kill herself. And if I'd let her go, she would have killed herself. Then why have you beaten her up? She did that to herself. She was so suicidal. Literally, this is some of the stuff that I've heard that he tried, like he planned to say and attempted to until he pled guilty because it was like, dude, there's CCTV. There's CCTV with audio of us literally, like me saying, okay, you're holding me hostage. How does this end? Me begging to go to hospital and you're refusing. There's so much evidence. And he had no choice but to plead guilty. Because if he didn't plead guilty and went to a trial, he would have had to serve an extra year. So next we have count 8. Assault, occasionally bodily harm. Right, there's all different assault charges. You've got common assault, assault occasioning bodily harm, and grievous bodily harm. Grievous bodily harm is severe assault where it's like you could be like, you like maimed for life kind of thing. I have 2 permanent injuries from this person. Oh, he would be thrilled to hear that. I can never kneel on my left knee again and I can't sit without pain because of the coccyx injury for the rest of my life. However, I was only going to get GBH, grievous bodily harm, for a coccyx injury. This is a whole other event, by the way. This is another arrest prior to this where he just got nothing, like not even a fine, like just free. Went to court, got arrested, charged, went to court, got nothing recorded on his, he convinced the court not to record it on his record. So he got nothing and I've got pain for the rest of my life. I was told if it was fractured, if there was a fracture, you know, a fracture that heals in 6 weeks, you get more, but you get the higher one. But if it wasn't, you just get like normal assault. So yet chronic, you can't prove that you have chronic pain for the rest of your life and when they're in the community, usually it's only like 6 months wait for their court date because it's in the community. It doesn't go to like the high courts or anything. So my GP kept just telling them like, she's still in pain, but that doesn't count. They didn't increase the charge unless there was like a fracture that heals in 6 weeks. I'd rather have a fracture heal in 6 weeks than, anyway, that's how it works. I mean, they're not medically trained, so they just have to pick something. So I actually got assault occasioning bodily harm. That was probably for my head injuries and the way I looked. And when the police came to the shop I escaped to, I was telling them how scared I was to talk to them about it, and I was telling them about the threats he had made if I talked to the police. And I was saying, will you believe me? Because he's very manipulative and you might think he'll try and convince you I'm mentally ill. He'll try and convince you that I'm suicidal, I'm not well or something. Will you believe me? And the police said, look at your face. We believe you. Like, they didn't mean it like literally. There were no mirrors. It took until a lot later in hospital until I finally saw my face. I was like, whoa, oh, I get it now. Yeah, wow. Beaten. Looking, my whole head, my whole face. I had to wear makeup a lot for a while after that to not freak out people. So it was probably the head injuries or the neck or the face. Like, it was the way I looked. So they got one charge for that. And then there were the next four charges, count 9, 10, 12, and 13 are common assault. So 4 charges for common assault, 1 charge for occasioning bodily harm. And then count 11, the last one, threatening violence. There were threats to kill me and my kids. There were lots and lots of threats. And I don't know if that means him saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm threatening to kill you because of how I told them that. Or was it just that he was violent with me the whole night nonstop? Was it being violent? Because it's like, dude, he ain't threatening it. He be in it, but it might be regarding that if you tell the police, I will kill you. If I go to prison, I will hunt you down and kill you. I will wait years and I will find you and kill you. What a lovely thing to say to another human being. What an absolute unhinged, mentally disturbed, violent, dangerous offender. So that was the list of indictment. Now, the difference between that and sentencing is if someone is... So now, where are you up to? Now you're waiting for the trial. Are they going to plead guilty or not guilty? The justice system wants them to plead guilty because the amount of money, time, and everything it costs to do a trial, they have to get juries. It's a big thing. It's very expensive. So they want them to plead guilty. But no one's just going to say, I'm guilty. Especially these people, narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, all these antisocial personality disorders. They are not going to say, yeah, I did it. I'm guilty. You need to give them a reason to admit guilt. And they also say, well, you're not really admitting guilt, but you're just pleading guilty. And they go, yeah, I had this is what he told me. When he pled guilty to, the assaults and everything prior to this event, the first arrest, he's like, I was never found guilty in a court of law. I'm not guilty. And I'm like, no, you got convicted of a crime. And he's like, I pled guilty, but I was never found guilty in a court of law. So I am innocent. I just chose to plead guilty. See how their minds work? It's that control, that power and control. So pleading guilty, they would rather that than go to trial and it come out that they were proven guilty. If they're pleading guilty, there's still some element of doubt that they can put in people's minds. Like, oh, I pled guilty just to get it over and done with. I'm innocent, but I just wanted the whole thing gone. Because they control the narrative with the people around them. But besides that, they also offer them deals. They drop some charges in exchange for them pleading guilty. Because at the end of the day, the sentence is going to be the same. And the prosecution are making sure that the charges that remain still reflect the sentence that they want to give them in the end. It's just words to them on paper. And in Australia, you cannot access someone's criminal records at all in Australia. You can't do that. So no one will ever really see it. It's only if you're going for certain jobs and they ask for a police check. And if they ask for that, well, you're not going to go for that job, are you? So there's all this emphasis put on, don't put it on the criminal record, but all it really means is you can't work for the government. And in certain jobs that need people who are responsible, they will want a police check. But most jobs, like day-to-day kind of jobs, you can get no one will know. And for women and men and people dating, you cannot look up somebody to see if they have... You can look up court. You can look up this court thing where you can find out if they've gone to court, but it doesn't say why. But you can find out what court or what kind of court or something. But so it can allude to You've gone to court once. But then all that does is give someone like this, like a narcissist or something, opportunity to say, oh, yeah, it was a traffic thing. I got too many parking tickets, or I got, they're going to lie. They're going to lie. So it really sucks that UK and USA, there are checks you can do. You can find out things about people. In Australia, you can't. So that really. So in this case, what did they drop? They dropped stalking. They actually asked me first, what's the most important charge to you? And I said, deprivation of liberty, because that shows I was held hostage, and how do you talk your way out of that? So, of course, he went for, I want stalking dropped, because that's another one. How does he talk his way out of stalking when he's trying to tell everyone? His narrative was that I was stalking him. I was desperately in love with him. I was in a relationship with him. I hadn't left him. I was with him. And I was that unhinged that I was like, I'll kill myself if I can't have you. He was trying to paint that picture. Meanwhile, I am saying, please stay away. Do not speak to me. Do not come near me. I'm blocking him on everything. And I have explained in other episodes, there was an episode on stalking, you can find that, where I had to maintain phone contact with text, because if I shut that, every time I shut that down, he came and threatened to do things with my kids. Like my kids were, he would come to the house and do things, and my kids were there, and they would get traumatized and hurt. And so I had to maintain this contact that was absolutely toxic, abusive, and horrible in an attempt to protect my children. So that kind of sucked that I was put in that situation, but we do what we have to do. We risk assess. So they've dropped stalking, and I think they might have dropped one assault charge or something. So because they always drop like a couple of charges. So let's go through the actual conviction and the time. Right. So counts 1 and 4, contravention of domestic violence order, breaching the DV order. Counts 1 and 4, they remain, and he was given 6 months imprisonment for each one. Count 2, willful damage, 12 months imprisonment. Count 3, choking, strangulation, thank you very much, in a domestic setting. So if you strangle someone on the street, it might be a bit different than if it's just your wife, because she's not done the dish. People think women are like, oh, I'm not going to do this, rah, and their husbands, and that's why they get hit. They don't realise that there are these unhinged people who are calculated and planned, who from the day they meet the person, they're creepy criminals who are being violent and unhinged, and there's nothing you say or do any different to any other wife. So count 5, the stalking has been dropped. Count 6, burglary at night with violence, 12 months imprisonment. Count 7, deprivation of liberty, 12 months imprisonment. Count 8, common assault, 12 months imprisonment. Count 9, assault occasionally bodily harm, 12 months imprisonment. Count 11, threatening violence at night, 3 years imprisonment. Whoa, that's serious, isn't it? If you're going to threaten violence, threaten it during the day. Criminals, hot tip there, because when they add nighttime to all these things. Anyway, so all up, that comes to 12 years imprisonment. So he was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. So how does that come down to 1? Welcome to the Australian justice system. So all those sentences are served concurrently. That means at the same time. So that means you look at the longest individual sentence, which is the strangulation and the threatening violence. They're both 3 years. So therefore, the 12 years drops to 3 years, because all those different years are being served concurrently, meaning at the same time. So now 12 years has turned to 3 years. So now we've got 3 years. And the rule in the justice system is that you only serve 1/3 of your sentence in prison, then you're allowed out on parole. So he served a year, then was allowed out with the remainder of the 2 other years on parole. Now there's conditions to parole, because you are still serving an imprisonment sentence, but you are allowed to serve it in the community. You have appointments, and there are certain conditions. And there are conditions like don't do domestic violence and don't go near me or try and kill me or anything like that. However, as I've said before, the threats were, oh, wait years and years and then I'll come and find you and get you. I think they just like having an impact in your life, and they want you to fear them because they want to feel that power and control. And it's like, if you are that unhinged that you're going to kill me, there's not much I can do about it except for move far, far, far away, try and start a whole new life. But at the end of the day, if you're going to hunt me down like an absolute psychopath, that's on you. That is your behavior, and you will get the consequences of that action. There's only so much a victim/survivor can do, and it's not our fault if we accidentally get killed. Like, we do what we can to stay safe, but it's not our fault if this person does make that decision. But newsflash, woohoo! This person has been returned to prison, and it has nothing to do with me. I'm not telling you when. I'm not giving away any identifying information, albeit I could, because all I've talked about in this episode is the facts, and I'm allowed to give their name with that. However, because, in this podcast, I talk about so many different people and experiences that it could be assumed that, oh, was that them as well, and everything, and then you can face defamation. So I'm still going to hide the identity, and I'm not telling you exactly when this happened. However, this person has been returned to prison, like an actual prison. They're in prison now, and it has nothing to do with me. Now, I was told, because you're linked. So what happens when you get the conviction? So we're up to that part. You then have to make, anyone who's out there and they've got a conviction, please make an application to the Victims Register. It's a form, just Google it. I think it's an Australia-wide thing, the Victims Register, and they are the ones that tell you if they're released, if they die, if they go to, I'm sort of stuck on if they die part. Yes, they do tell you that. While they're serving their sentence only. They don't tell you about their life. Like, once their sentence is done, they're out in the community. Good luck. Good luck to you all. May the odds be ever in your favor. However, while they're serving that sentence, they tell you if they're going for parole, if they're released, if they're put back in prison, and all those things, just so you can safety plan and know, be aware. So what happened was I got notified that there was a warrant out for their arrest. And then I got another notification they're now in the prison. And that I talked to them, and they don't know what it is, because Victims Register is separate to like the police and everything. But they know that this person and the parole board and everything, but they say that the parole board would have deemed them a risk to the community. So, and they've breached a condition. And I was told their conditions when they got convicted, and the conditions were don't commit an act of domestic violence and don't come near me. Well, not that I know of, it hasn't come near me. I would have had to give a statement, obviously. So there's yet another victim. Now we're all going to be able to make a club. We could have a Facebook group at this stage. I don't know if it's a family member. I don't know if it's a partner. When this happened, when the return happened, the person had been out of prison around about a year, so they can't help themselves. It is a compulsion. It is like an addiction. They thrive off the power and control, and that they get like this sick kick out of violence against women and children. That you are serving a prison sentence where you're going to go back to jail if you do it, and they cannot help it. They have to do it. And obviously he's done something bad enough to go into prison. And you know what? The best thing coming from a domestic violence survivor is, it's not my fault. You can't blame me, mate. It has nothing to do with me. The original sentence was about me. And how good would you feel if you just got abused by some dude you were dating? And obviously, whoever you'd been dating would have no idea about what he did to me. Imagine if you just got abused by a guy and next minute he's put in jail. And you're like, huh? What? And the police tell you, oh yeah, he was on probation. He was actually in prison for doing this to someone else. And so because he's done it again, we're sending him back. Imagine if you just like give one little statement, the next minute the guy you're with goes to jail, and it's because he was actually serving a sentence for doing this to another woman. But I can only assume, come up with theories as to what has happened, but knowing that there had to be a risk to the community that was bad enough to put them back in prison, knowing the conditions were don't commit an act of domestic violence and don't come near me, it's like, well, we know which one it wasn't. So, and it's disappointing that there's like no rehab for these people. There's no remorse. They are what they are and they continue to offend. And it's really disappointing that there was no way that if this is a new partner since they came out of prison the first time, if this is a romantic partner, it is so frustrating that there was no website that this person could look up his name and find out what he did. Because I can guarantee you there are so many women out there who've been through abuse and other things in life, and they don't want to entertain the risk of getting in with someone like this. If they saw one charge, they would flee. Whereas other people are like, oh, I'll believe what he's telling me, but, I'll still keep it in mind. Whereas there are so many people in situations, they have kids, they're just like, I cannot go through that again. Yet there's no way in Australia for you to find out that this has happened. And you could be with a guy who's just come out of prison for trying to murder and hold hostage and do all these things to his ex or do violent crimes to children, and you won't know. There's no way you can find out. You only know what they tell you. And we've all been there where a guy says something and someone goes, oh, well, you sure that's the truth about his ex? And they go, no, he said it. He said that his ex was crazy. Because we always have been raised to take someone's word for it. And it just seems so unusual to not believe what someone says. But there are these people out there. He's not going to tell anyone the truth. He's not going to say that he was in prison for that. And if it came out, he'd play the victim and say, she was mentally unhinged. I tried to save her and she framed me for that. You know it. But then at least they know. And then they know that, oh, he's probably lying. Like, just knowing helps. And so that's a frustrating thing, that there's probably a victim out there. I don't know. There could be it sounds like there is a victim out there, but it could be family as well. There are females in the family. But it could also be a romantic partner, and that there's someone out there who's been hurt by this person. And if it's a romantic partner, there's no way they would have known what they did. There's no way. And it's happened to them now. And then he'll come out again and it'll happen to someone else, because the system protects his privacy. Apparently it's his privacy, and he has rights to that privacy. Where are the rights for the women and children who do seek a husband and partner? Like, it's not, I don't know why it seems so bad that someone wants to date is seen like, oh, well, that's on you then. If you want to date, that's a risk you've got to take. There needs to be something in place. There needs to be changes. But unfortunately, I'm not a white man in a suit, so no one listens to me. Oh, I'm a DV survivor. No one listens to me. Like, who would want to listen to me? And no one really listens to the podcast. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do it for. If anyone actually is listening, could you email me and provide me with some feedback, please? I'm serious. Please email me, loveisabattlefieldpodcast at gmail.com, because I am not sure if I should hang up the microphone, because I just don't know. I'm not trusting the Spotify stats, and I don't actually know if anyone's listening, like properly listening, or if anyone's getting anything out of this. I just know where I was at when I came out, and that I really wanted to know all this stuff, but I think I'm annoying. I have told people in my personal life about the podcast, and they all went quiet and didn't actually give me feedback. So that just tells me they think it's really bad. And so I'm thinking, oh, I've got to stop embarrassing myself. Maybe I should just hang up the mic and like give up on this. So if you do want me to keep going, like, could you please email me, loveisabattlefieldpodcast at gmail.com, because I'm not getting accurate stats that anyone is listening. The stats I was getting was one person listened for 12 seconds, yet it's telling me like all these other people listen. So I'm not sure what's happening, not sure if anyone actually is listening. So I would really appreciate if you took the time to do that, especially if you took the time, maybe just cut and paste. So if you go into the episode, there'll be notes like saying this episode is about, go in there and scroll down, and you can just cut and paste the email address out of that, because I don't want you to have to sit there and type loveisabattlefieldpodcast at gmail.com. But honestly, I would really appreciate it. Just want to know, hello, is it me you listen to? Because I don't know. And it's getting to the point where it's like, I'm going to lay down all this information so it's out in the ether. Hopefully it helps someone. You know, it's not about me. And it's not about like making money, because I don't make any money. But is it helping someone? If it's not helping anyone and it's just kind of annoying people and just sitting there, like, you don't want to waste your time trying to like, oh, I've got to get an episode out if You're doing it for no one. You really, like, it's really for you guys. This is for you guys. I need to know that somebody, is anybody out there? Because at the end of the day, I do this. I spend this time. I do it for you. I apologize that I don't edit as neatly and sharply. I don't edit like at all anymore because I had to change a program and it's really hard to edit. And I honestly, if the podcast was moving, if people were listening, you lose it. Like, people were listening, I'd be putting in all those. I was putting in so many hours at the start. So many hours. But now that like no one's really listening, like I've kind of lost that momentum a bit. And I'm thinking, I think I'm embarrassing myself. I don't know if anyone's out there, because Spotify kind of tells you you're getting people playing it, but then you look deeper into the stats and it's like no one is. So I just need to hear back. Is anyone listening? Is anyone taking anything from this? And I don't mean to be whinging. I'm not whinging. I'm whinging for you. Like, this is for you. Everything I do is for survivors. It's for people currently in it. It's for people who need to know what I didn't know. It's for you. But if it's not giving you a benefit, I don't want to waste your time or my time. This is for you. So tell me what you need. Give me some feedback. Tell me if you like it. Anything, please. Thank you. All right, legends. See you next episode. I don't know what it's going to be about. I keep recording lots of things and then going, oh, cringe, and deleting. I think I'm having like a crisis because I'm like, no one likes me. I'm just going to delete all these episodes. People think I'm an idiot. I'm going to delete that one where I gave too much information about myself. Look, it's all good fun at the end of the day, and I always keep it real. I am one of those too real people, and it actually frustrates me. I wish I was more neurotypical, more like a sheep, more just blended in with society, but I can't help it. I'm real. I say what I think what I say. I don't think much, though, clearly. I keep it real. And the most important thing is you are safe. You are safe, and you know that you are loved and you are worthy. And you know that everything DV related that happens to you, it's not your fault. Okay, stay safe, legends. Love ya. Bye.